Off we go.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Survivor NSFW, Professor Tim Watch's Australian Outback. It is the first time I get to see this. I am your host, Karen Eisenberg, and we have now moved on from our coverage of Borneo into the second season of Survivor, the Australian Outback. So I'll bring Tim in a moment, but as usual, I want to tell you that I am modeling the new season Who Dis shirt. I felt this was appropriate. Based on something that Michelle Fitzgerald said on season 40. You can find this shirt and many others at johnnyfairplay.com. And remember, with every purchase, you get a phone call from the great Johnny Fairplay. It's Jonny, no H. Also, just want to tell all of you in the chat, it's hard for me to respond to the chat in real time because there's a bunch of things that I'm doing at the same time, and I'm fairly new at this. But I do see your comments. And we're really glad that you're here and you're chatting with us live every week. So, Tim, welcome to our new season. As we move from Borneo to Australian Outback, we move on to land. What's going on in your life?
Oh well, so many things. But I was just going to say, you see the chat. I don't see the chat, so it's all I see it after. Oh my goodness, did that person say that? And it's all very exciting. I'm more of a I'm not sure whether I'm more of a Luddite or a saboteur or whether I'm just terrified of technology. I have a lot of technology, but if it tries to do things I don't really understand, then I get sort of frightened by it, and I can't really function. I do hate people who say just use the app, because I don't like abbreviations like that. I mean, I find it irritating. You know, we've had programs for many years. Why not let's call it a program? Right. Please use the program. I don't mind you.
They use the word applications, though. I mean, app is short for application.
Yes, an application, something to stick over something else.
So that's what this is. That's what it is. It's like a skin that you put on their website.
An app, I feel an app is something. It's something that I feel is slightly shameful. I don't have apps on my phone, as far as I know. At least I try and avoid them, and because I can barely manage to do all the sort of analog stuff on the phone. And I've got a modern phone. And I'm hoping
the apps actually make it easier. We'll talk offline, because the apps actually make it easier for your phone to deal with certain websites. That might be why you're having more problems, because you're not using the app. But whatever, we will. And it's also really, it is just funny that I am kind of the tech person in this grouping.
Well,
I am not good at this either. So it really is a miracle that we actually get a show done every week, and it hasn't blown up for technical reasons yet.
It is ironic that I feel a bit sort of frightened of technology, because I spend all my day using sort of drawing technology. So there's this wonderful system called Adobe, and it's got all these different bits, and I have many different plugins. And I understand them very comfortably until they update, and then I sort of in despair I want to tear my hair out. But in fact, there's a little hole in the top of my hair, which is going. I'm feeling more monkish by the day. I probably will never take my hat off again.
Well, hats to cover a multitude of hair sins.
Well, I think my hats are going to become more and more elaborate as I resign myself to wearing one constantly. But I in my life I've been through situations where I've worn a hat pretty well all day and got away with it, and that was fine. I'm just going back to that, so that's fine as well.
Well, we are hoping that there are preparations being made for a Survivor NSFW hat. And so when those are,
I will be the first to model it,
and then you can just wear that.
Is this going to be a sort of baseball hat?
So, yeah, or a trucker hat, something similar with a brand.
A trucker hat. What's a trucker hat?
I can't even really explain it. We'll talk to our guest next week. We'll explain trucker hats.
Couldn't we have a hat like a sort of Russian hat? You know, one of those wonderful things which Lenin used to wear.
You mean like the fur hats?
No, not the big fur hats. No, those are sort of the Hasidic hats. I think one of the little cap at the front, and sort of often made out of leather, but it could be made out of corduroy, and I think those would be very fetching.
No, because I asked because I do have. When I was in what was then the Soviet Union, I did buy one of those mink hats with the ear flaps.
Oh yes, the mink hats. I've got one of those. So my hat is rabbit, I think, and it keeps falling to pieces. So if I wear it, it's like a snowstorm. But occasionally I do put it on, and I sing Kalinka or something. I quite like Russian songs. There's something rather jolly about it, and Russian songs and a little vodka, they work very well. Yeah, I remember being in a restaurant in Moscow and being presented with a plate of very strange meat, and it turned out to be a bear, and it was quite solid.
Yeah. I'm sure it is.
What does bear taste like? What you say is it tastes like chicken, but everything is supposed to taste. No, it doesn't really. It doesn't taste remotely like chicken. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it tastes like, but it just seemed a bit sort of dense.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is hard because again, like I can distinguish obviously beef, from bison, from lamb. But if you tell me what's the difference, I don't know. Yeah, but I'm like, it tastes like lamb. It tastes like bison. Like you can't really describe it beyond that.
I'm quite keen on goat, but I feel a bit embarrassed about that because I spent a year looking after them, and I feel I'm eating my friends. And I named all my goats. So each time I had one of them was taken off to be slaughtered, and they were always the little boys. I was eating Dimitri and Yorgo, and all these people that I knew, but Elias.
Yeah, see, I eat meat. It's fine. And obviously, so you feel funny about the goats, but, you eat cows and chickens and everything else. A lot of this is cultural, right? It's just that, but you're in a culture, again, where they herd goats and then they eat the goats.
Yes, and that's what they had to do. And, when I was very small, I remember being encouraged to pluck chickens, and I was a very earnest chicken plucker, and the chickens are still slightly warm, and as a little 6-year-old, I quite enjoyed that. But somehow I sort of divorced my mind from the idea that this inanimate chicken had just a few minutes ago been running around the chicken yard, the farmyard. But I do remember also at about the same time, we'd taken the guns and gone out after something or other. I can't remember what, probably a fox, and the farmer came back with this baby rabbit, which I kept lovingly in a little box that died that night from fright, probably. And I was terribly upset about this little rabbit. And yet I was quite happily plucking a chicken the next day.
Right. I think with children, like my parents had told me the story because apparently when I was small, I didn't meat was one of the few things that I would eat. I really didn't like many vegetables or whatever. So they were really worried about, what's going to happen when Karen figures out, because I guess I'd started asking about food. Right, where does this cherry come from? And how do we get cake and whatever? And so it's like she's going to ask about, where steaks come from, and she's going to starve to death. And apparently they asked, so where did steak come from? And my father just said very matter of fact, he's like, comes from cows. And I was like, just like milk. I said, okay. And that was the end of my psychological trauma. Right. The only issue I've ever had, and again, obviously, if you eat meat, you should be aware. I was going to say you must be aware, but you don't have to be aware. You can just go to the supermarket and buy the stuff on the styrofoam trays and everything. The only time I ever really had that reaction. So again, as a young adult, I went home for the weekend to visit my father, and I was going to school in Boston. So at that point in the airport, they actually sold live lobsters. And they would pack them up with ice, and basically they were good for 6 or 8 hours. So pretty much you could fly anywhere in the U.S., right, and it would survive, right? Because I
think flying lobster is quite a thought.
Right, because you have to cook. You can't kill a lobster and then wait a while and eat it. It has to be dispatched immediately before you eat it. I don't know why, but toxins or something. So I came home and I bought 2 of these lobsters. Yes, now I keep kosher, but this is decades ago.
I was going to make the point, and I was thinking, I was thinking, kashrut. What is correct here? I'm sure lobsters.
No, because it has to have fins and scales, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly. Lobsters don't.
So, but I came home with this box and I gave it to my father and I said, you take it, you cook it. And I said, I don't want to see it, right? I know that it's a live animal and you're going to boil it and that's fine. I just don't want to see it. So I'm sitting in the next room and I was on the telephone and my father thought it was hilarious. He just came in with, one lobster in each hand and, when the claws are going, he's going, ooh. And I said, Daddy, I hope you're really hungry because you're going to eat 2 lobsters. I just can't see something alive and then see it on my plate 15 minutes later. Yeah. Again, too close for comfort for me.
Well, I had the same attitude to crabs. Really, I spent a lot of my childhood near the beach and on the east side of the UK, and so lots of crabs. I really quite enjoyed catching crabs, but the thought of eating them was out of the question.
Yeah, and crabs are a big thing. I live in Maryland, and that is a big part. And even if I didn't keep kosher, I was never a huge fan of seafood. So no.
I don't mind them. I don't mind them moving around in a tank. But oysters, I think I could just about deal with oysters. But crabs, I don't want crabs. And I don't want lobsters, really. And jellyfish. Now, they're all part of the same sort of thing. Nice to see, lovely to look at, very nice as Disney animals. In fact, probably a bit nicer than Baloo. After all, I've eaten bears. And venison. I'm a great fan of venison, I must confess. So there goes Bambi. The only animal in the Disney canon I don't think I've yet eaten, really, I suppose, is mice. And I don't think I'm going to try that. I'm not an ancient Roman. Mice and honey, I quite enjoy.
Well, they eat rat on Borneo.
My cats haven't had mice either. I don't understand cat food, Karen. Do you understand cat food? Because I find it extraordinary. Cat food, they have beef in cat food. I can't think of a single cat that I know who would actually slaughter a cow and eat it. Why do they not have cat food packages? Very dainty pieces of mouse, rat, specially produced for your cat, and spiders. Cats love spiders.
I understand what you're saying about the beef, but my cat actually loves the beef. Cat food and chicken much more than has not nearly as much use for things like tuna and salmon, which I thought one should.
Tuna. Can you imagine a cat going after a tuna? I mean, it's the other way around. The tuna would be devouring the cat. Help! I'm a cat. I'm going to eat you later.
Okay. For those of you who are not, if you're listening to the audio only playback on this, you may just want to jump on YouTube. We're about 13 minutes in. If you want to see Tim's impression of a tuna trying to eat a cat. Speaking of somebody, again, who does not know much about tech chat, if any of you can figure out how to send me a GIF of that, I would be very, very grateful. I would use it for many, many things. But, okay, Tim, it's probably time for us to talk about Survivor. What do you think?
We need to get on to Survivor because we've now gone from somewhere in the Pacific to Australia. And I was trying to think before I switched it on this afternoon. I was thinking, how are they going to sail out to the Outback? Is there some convenient river? And then they drop them in a military aircraft. So and we had a visual of people vomiting into bags. I don't know whether that was set up or that was genuine.
I think it was genuine because I would certainly be one of those people with the bag. Military planes, my understanding, it does not have. I don't know what the equivalent is for like a shock absorber on a plane, but apparently, civilian planes, you get on a 747, it really is. It's generally fairly smooth. Whereas in these military planes, apparently, they fly much lower, and I guess, and maybe they're just not that concerned the way that a civilian pilot would about, trying to keep the ride nice and smooth. So yeah, people are barfing. But then after everybody's barfing, then we get the shot of Probst. He's sitting in the back of the plane with his legs down.
Oh, I didn't see Probst. I didn't pick him up. I was so bewitched by the paper bags. Do you know the word chunder?
No, I don't.
No, well that must go into your lexicon, because into your thesaurus, because it's another great word. Vomit simply means to go out. So the vomitarium would be what we would call the entrance or the exit in a theatre. They wouldn't have used the word exit. Exit would mean he goes out or it goes out. They weren't that rude. So the Romans were very keen on vomit as a concept. Yeah. Anyway, let's go on.
For sharing. I don't know if you're like this, but like for me, just even watching somebody throw up or hearing somebody throw up,
it's unendurable.
No, we're going to get to see some more of that in another episode soon, but not in this one.
My partner fell off a roof the other day, about 10 days ago, and
how's he doing?
He's doing much better, but absolutely no thanks at all to any healthcare. I mean, we've actually got some private healthcare, which in fact I'm dumping today because they were utterly useless. And we went backwards and forwards to what you would call, what is it? It's not health and deficiency, is it? I think it's accident and emergency here, but you call it something else, don't you? What do you call it?
The emergency room or the ER, and then we also have something called urgent care, which is ER. And urgent care is if you are not, deathly ill or injured, but you need to see a doctor. Because normally, if you go to an emergency room in America and it's not a real life or death emergency, right, you can sit there for a very long time.
Yeah.
But that's what the emergency room. So that's where you went, or you tried to go back and with your partner, and what happened?
Well, he's sort of improving, but we've had to turn to friends really, and but shortly after he fell off the roof, he then had to vomit, and so I had recent experience of this witnessing of vomit, and it does sort of you have to steel yourself when it happens, and it's sort of it's one of those things one does. It's one of those things one does. I think it's marginally more endurable when it's a human being, because cat vomits can be really quite unpleasant. I think they sort of drop it on the floor like a dog.
I'm well aware. And the best part is always that often in the middle of the night, I think my cat wants to make it easy for me to find it in the morning. So she will throw up like right next to my bed, so that when I wake up in the morning, if I don't look and I just put my feet down, I'll step right into it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And there's also a feeding sound, which I think is
I think we've all had enough of the vomit.
I'm so sorry
for today, but no, but don't worry, it's going to come back. I think it's in the next episode. We will get to have another conversation about vomit, but I'm surprised. But you didn't see. So the shot after. So Probst walks through the plane, right? It tells us 16 people, blah blah blah, and then they saw him. We sit him, like I said, seeing in the back of the military plane, with his legs kind of dangling, and 16 people, with $1 million, one survivor, and then the plane banks at like a 45-degree angle. And I'm sitting there going, what did he fall out? I mean, I am calling BS on this. I mean, I'm wondering if that's like an editing trick, because there's no way that he could be sitting like it's the back of a military transport plane, right? It's open.
And is it open at that point?
Well, we can't the shot we see.
I think they close it. They close it and then they open it for you to go out. But
then he was sitting. Maybe they closed the door and he was on the outside, because we could just see him sitting. You'll have to go back and watch it. But anyway, like I said, I'm calling shenanigans. But again, somebody who knows more about this than I do, maybe one can sit there and not fall out when the plane bangs. But anyway, so let's just talk about 16. Sorry, what did you say, Tim?
I'm sure Jeff can do almost anything.
And with coming seasons, we will see even more of this kind of Jeff as superhero.
Jeff has
so
got it. Jeff has Mary Poppins.
We will see it again.
Right. In fact, Jeff wouldn't need an aircraft. He could just sort of fly there of his own volition, or just appear magically in the outback. Hello.
Like a genie, right? He can just, that would actually be very practical. You know, if you could just kind of carry Jeff Probst around in a little bottle, right?
Yes.
And just, you know, and when you need him to, you know, host a challenge or whatever, you rub the bottle and he pops out.
I don't think we should talk about rubbing Jeff Probst.
Yes.
The mind boggles. Yeah, maybe not. Let's not go there.
So we get these 16 people, right? Again, pulled from all walks of life. And I think the best way to do this is just, I'm going to go through these 16 people, just kind of in the order that Survivor gave us in the opening credits.
Yeah.
And, you know, we get this little, you know, introduction, and they stopped doing this pretty soon after this, where they saw rather than just showing you, you know, now they just show you the shot of you in the jungle or the outback or whatever. But back then they would actually go to your hometown and, you know, do like if you remember, like with Nick Brown. So he was sitting on this bench that said Harvard Law School. I know where that bench is. And I wanted the shot of him because he's a student, right, sitting on that bench. Or, you know, they have Tina, right, you know, pushing her kids on the swings, you know. So it's a very quick way of kind of telling us, like I said, in only a few seconds, give us just kind of a snapshot of who this person is. Now, of course, it means it's a stereotype, right, because they're going to tell us one thing about them. But it can still be relevant. And so we start with Ogakor, and we're told that Ogakor will always wear green. Right, just like we did this on Borneo, that we had yellow and orange tribes. Now we have blue and green. So with Ogakor, the first person we meet is Colby, right? Yes. Colby, who is an auto customizer in Texas.
I see. He manipulates your car.
And I think what they're talking about is right. You know, if you buy a car and you want a better stereo or something like that, or you want it that you take it to him and
turn into one of those little robots, like a transformer. He transforms your car. Colby. I think Colby is a very nice name. Is Colby a traditional American name, or do you think he was named after Alexis Carrington and all her friends? Because I think the Colbys was the better of the two series. I loved the Colbys with Stephanie Beacham and Charlton Heston. Charlton hanging on the mantelpiece.
It's an American name. It is certainly, it may have become more popular because, again, a lot of these people had, you know, children named after them. So it's possible that some of the Colbys that were born around 20 years ago were influenced by this Colby. Again, I can't put myself back 20 years and think about how common a name it was.
Yeah, this would be about 1990, 1992, that sort of time. No, maybe just before that, actually. 86, 87. So
about and yeah, that's 15, 20 years before Survivor. Even that was on, I think, like when I was a teenager.
But Colby is a boy or a girl, couldn't.
Right, it could really be for either. And you saying Karen, you say Colby. The first thing I think of is cheese.
Oh, I don't. The first thing I think of is somebody. Somebody with blonde hair called Maxwell Caulfield or something. I can't remember. You know, very, very. I just think of the Colbys. I just think of the TV series. I can't get it out of my head now. You know, all I see now is all images of Dynasty. We're going to be hard pressed. This entire podcast is all going to be about vomit and Joan Collins if we don't watch it. Not the two together.
Colby tells us, so so we see this later, that he brought a Texas flag as his luxury item, but his quote unquote, it is a flag, but it also is a tarp, right? It is a very, very large flag with grommets, right? Put around the side. It makes it very easy to put it on top of the shelter. He actually did get away with it because you know they had to approve the luxury items.
He defends it. He defends this.
But the point is that this was also kind of pre-gaming before, you know, thinking about how you can use your luxury item. So he asked, you know, his handler in casting. He said, "Could I bring a Texas flag as my luxury item? And they said, sure. So he went out and got this 30-foot Texas flag and then brought it to somebody who waterproofed it and cut grommets into it. So Okafor is going to be very dry, right? Because we know that tarp is one of the things that often they can win after a week or so. So no, Colby absolutely pulled one over on production and got away with it. And they figured out what happened, but they didn't take it away from him.
Yeah. And the Bible as well, which might have been useful, sort of tear up a news as it is.
Yeah. I hope about the burning bush. This is another one of these kind of iconic Survivor lines. I think it might be the first thing Colby says. He says, every morning I thank God for two things: that I'm alive and that he made me a Texan. And this is very much Colby's character. So, he's a Texan. We never forget that he's a Texan. And again, and that flag, if we were to forget, that flag will remind us.
You see, I because I don't really understand all the states in America. Does each state have a distinctive identity?
Not every single state, but certainly regions do, and something that's as large as Texas. Yeah, I mean, Texas was an independent entity for a short period of time, right, before it became a state. And I think they've never really forgotten it. And yes, they are Americans, but they are very much Texans.
And Oklahoma, of course, in the same way, presumably, or and maybe Florida. So it's the states which joined later that have this sort of.
But even the original states, again, so Maryland is one of the 13 original colonies. And again, so what do we have? Like I said, we've got crabs, we've got Francis Scott Key, that's pretty much it. But, we do try to have a Maryland identity. By the way, the Survivor Maryland t-shirt, also available at johnnyfairplay.com. I did have to buy that one because, again, being a Maryland person, I had to buy that.
Tell me about what's behind you, because I'm not trying to delay getting onto Borneo, but you've changed your background. You're now in a sort of corner, and you've got this strange Celtic cross behind you. But I think one of the characters you.
Yeah, so this Celtic cross, as I'm moving here up here on the screen. So this is one of our logos. This is also available on a t-shirt at johnnyfairplay.com. So this is actually a play on a band called Guns N' Roses. Are you familiar with them?
I know Guns N' Roses, absolutely. But I didn't realize that. But I think it's beautifully designed. I wish I'd designed it.
Yeah, but there it is. So that's Johnny up at the top, and then Zach and Matt, and me down at the bottom. And I like, because I can also pull Matt's beard. You haven't met Matt yet, but Matt has a very long dreadlocked beard. I'm looking forward to meeting Matt. Yes, we're going to try to get that. And the other thing is, I will go very quickly around the studio, and then we'll get back to Survivor. Over here, we just have Black Lives Matter and a semicolon for suicide awareness. This here is my children, like 20 years ago. Wonderful. Yes, those are my boys. Which one is the musician? This one. All three of them are. I mean, all of them do play multiple instruments. But yes, this one did write a theme for the show, and I was hoping to play it today. It didn't work out, but hopefully we'll hear it next time. Next week we'll have it. Let's lawyer up. This is just a reference, first of all, with being a lawyer. But this is a replica license plate from Breaking Bad, last Better Call Saul. Oh, I so like Breaking Bad, but I think Better Call Saul is the better show. Right. And this is Saul's license plate in Breaking Bad. Better Call Saul. Sorry? Don't we know people from Better Call Saul? What do you mean? Who do we know? Don't we have connections? Didn't I talk to somebody on your show who's friends with the actors in Better Call Saul? I know one of them very, very tangentially, but I don't know which. You must get him or her on our podcast. Those people are way too famous to do this podcast. Oh! Don't let a little fame stand in your way. Fame is, that glittering bauble. We don't want to pay too much attention to that. And then we just have currently pretending I'm at the beach. Oh yes. My life is always better when there's sand around. And this is the rules of Survivor. This is David Bloomberg's David is somebody who I'm hoping to get on, that he has been covering Survivor since the beginning, since 40. And so he has made up these rules about how to avoid getting voted out in Survivor. And then this is Eric Reichenbach, I believe, is the one who made this, the poster. Eric was on Survivor also. So that is my wall art. And I was also planning to hang some scarves. I do a lot of work for a company called Rapunzel that sells scarves and other head coverings. And so I was going to hang some of those also, just like to improve your sound. You want to have soft things around. But that did not happen yet. Okay, back to Survivor. If anybody is still, two people listening. Awesome.
I love
so
your
environment.
So
the next person is Marilyn Mad Dog Hershey.
Oh, yes. The former police officer.
And apparently, and pre-season, like, she was kind of pegged for being like a big character. She's going to be the new Rudy. Yes. I don't know. We really saw that in that first episode, but she certainly, but what they're hoping that she's going to be like Rudy in the sense that she speaks her mind.
And also, you know, she's quite sort of tough. She was the one who decided she was going to take a box with her, take the entire lid, and then somehow or other get someone else to help carry it. But initially, she's there with it on her own.
Right. And she's, I mean, and for somebody, she's in her 50s, you know, she's in very decent shape. I think she had recently retired as a police officer, but, you know, they do have to have a certain amount of physical fitness. So we have Mad Dog.
I must say the ageism which came out towards the end of the show, I think it was Mike who was talking about getting rid of somebody because he was over 50. And he was doing it quite sort of, quite obviously. I think what he was actually, I think it was all polemical, because I think actually what he was saying is he didn't like Roger. I think I'm on the right track there. And rather than saying I don't like Roger, he was...
That's on the other tribe. But yeah. But no, but the ageism, and especially ageism with regard to women, the double whammy of being older and female on Survivor, a lot of those people do not do particularly well. And it starts from the very beginning, right? Sonia was the first person voted off season 1.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. And Deb, who is, you know, not that old, but also I think she was in her 40s, right, is the first person voted off of Australia.
My instinct with Deb is that she was a potential leader and they got rid of her.
We'll get to, like I said, we're going to get to her. She is on the other tribe. But yeah, we'll talk a lot about Deb because this is going to be Deb's food episode.
Marilyn, I sort of warmed to Marilyn.
I like Marilyn. By the way, I have already reached out to her. I have not heard back, but she is still around, still kicking. She's on Facebook. Her politics are very much front and center, and they're not necessarily what you might think they might be for Mad Dog. You know, just her whole persona and her history as a police officer. So yeah, she seems to continue to be an interesting woman, and I'm hoping that I will hear from her. Because just like
I think she made a really good first impression. And I just love. I love these strong characters, but I think it's not just in reality TV where one's sort of starting off at a disadvantage by being over 50 and female. I think it's also, that sort of prejudice turns up in so many aspects of life as well, and it's something that we need to challenge at base. And I think part of the way that we need to challenge it, we need to see more older women in popular entertainment.
I agree. You're not going to get any pushback from that.
The problem is the roles dry up because popular entertainment seems to be so focused on this sort of romantic dream, really sponsored by Disney, that life finishes with marriage. It's a bit like the Ziegfeld Follies. I mean, that takes us back to the 1920s. That you've got to end the first act with a marriage ceremony. Wasn't there this wonderful? There was a wonderful musical directed by Tommy Tune about Will Rogers Follies. Is that right? Does that work?
It sounds familiar.
And he gets married quite early on, and he remains married until he dies in an airplane crash. A real person. And the show is designed like a Ziegfeld Follies, and Will says he's going to get married to this girl, and you hear the voice of Ziegfeld saying, "You can't get married yet until the end of Act 1. You know a Ziegfeld Follies, the end of Act 1," which is true, absolutely true. And you can think of the Ziegfeld Follies in 1923, I think, which was designed by this wonderful French designer. Well, in fact, he was Russian, Roman de Tirtov, but known as Erte. The man with the elegant black woman holding a sort of with a whippet on a lead. You must know this. Everybody knows this.
I'm sure I'll recognize it if I see it. Yeah.
I think it's Symphony in Black. But he designed the most extraordinarily Art Deco wedding gowns for the end of Act 1 thing.
Well, if I ever make the mistake of getting married again, I will definitely look that up though, because Deco, that's kind of my thing.
It's the thing, isn't it? It's the thing. It's a really
I grew up, with, in a house, an American house in the 1970s. And even at the time, I just remember thinking how horribly ugly it all was, right? And now it's considered mid-century modern.
There we are. There we
are. Yeah, everything eventually comes back.
Well, we think of the Hoover factory in just outside London, in Wembley or something, and Art Deco is just so beautiful and clean, but it's so difficult to be. It's so difficult to do simplicity. It's so much easier to do a bit of Baroque, a bit of Baroque or Rococo. Just throw in a few more peeling cupids. And you can hide any problems, but with Art Deco, you just want this simplicity. And
I would argue in any field, in art. I mean, I see the same thing even like with cooking, right? If you're going to do something very simple, it can be amazing, but it has to be perfect.
It's the same thing with writing. I don't have time to write something short. It's so difficult to be concise. I just go on forever.
We both do, but
I realize I'm much tighter and I'm much clearer if I don't have a script in front of me.
Interesting.
But with a script, I just think, oh my God, I've got to say this, and I will improvise around the script, and I will end up chattering away far more than I would if I had nothing.
Script.
Yeah. Get rid of all the crutches. Just remove all the things to hang on to, the books and the stuff. Teleprompters, these things, and I love them. I love all that because I love feeling secure. But take away that security, and actually, I think we're all much better and much clearer.
And I would argue that this is kind of what shows like Survivor are trying to do. Like you say, you take away people's crutches, and the goal is to kind of see what they're really made of.
Yes, I think so. I actually, on the subject of crutches, I would love to see, people who do have clear disabilities on a show like Survivor.
We will see a few, but it is more difficult on a show like Survivor, right? Because so I'll tell you, we'll have two deaf contestants. We will have one with a artificial leg. So it has, been done. And again, deafness, it's the kind of disability that, you can function just as well and as a deserted island as anywhere else.
But you see, the reality is, if you and I were in some sort of plane crash, God forbid, or stranded in a boat, on a desert island, how do we know that some of the other people who are stranded with us will not be sort of in wheelchairs and so on? And the whole conceit of this game seems to be that we're having to survive in this situation just as we find ourselves. And if you think of, I'm sure actually that people people would be able to play the game.
Right.
And
But
it would be perhaps more interesting and more and demonstrate more of the sort of breadth of culture that we have in our society. You know, we owe so much to people who have conquered disabilities, whether they're born with them or whether these are acquired. I mean, you, for example, in the States, you've got a president who was in a wheelchair.
Right. But apparently and this is hard for me to kind of relate to because it was obviously before I was born, but apparently that was not widely known, right?
No,
they just kind of avoided photographing him in his wheelchair.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, and prejudice, it's such an important concept, and understanding it, and it's I don't think it's about I think it's just about sort of ignoring that there's any difference. You just want to get to humanity,
right.
And in terms of survivor, you just want to see how can this person sort of improvise and help us survive. And I'm sure somebody with disabilities could meet the challenges. And I think the challenge should be made so they could.
Right. I think the issue with Survivor, because again, like Big Brother and The Circle, there are other shows again who have had many more people with disabilities because, again, they're less physically challenging shows. I mean, you do have to pass.
But there are the Paralympic Games.
Of course. Oh yeah, I'm not saying you can't be, an amputee. Like I said, there was an amputee on Survivor, and her, and that really had nothing to do with the way that she played the game.
Yes.
But so this is definitely a thing that I push. But I do feel like I said with Survivor, that because you're not eating, you're not sleeping, you do get to take your prescription drugs. But I feel like anybody with not even just disabilities after a certain age. I mean, like I said, Rudy, if you want to be 72 and sleep on the ground or sleep on bamboo, more power to you. But I couldn't even put anything else aside. If I was told that I had to sleep on the beach, on bamboo and then function, at my age, it was not happening. Whereas I feel like 30 years ago, it wouldn't have been as hard. Like I remember pulling these all-nighters in school all the time.
Well, yeah, I still pull all-nighters. It does seem to be harder and harder to survive it. I mean, I did a show about a year ago. I was doing illustrations and animation for a documentary, and the time was very, very tight. And I remember I had a month to do one particular episode, and I put in 15 all-nighters, and I really struggled to get back to get back into sort of proper routine after that. It knocked me a lot.
Yeah.
So that was one every other night. I was working.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I want to say age is just a number. On the other hand, you start, and you don't have to be, 70 or 80 years old. Things start to get harder. I don't think people who are, in their 20s, early 30s, they understand this intellectually, but they don't really understand that, like, take advantage of this time before everything starts.
Younger, I still used to go to the cinema and fall asleep. So I don't think that's something new.
That's just you. Okay, so let's see, so the next person we're going to talk about is Keith. And all we really know about Keith is that he's a chef. Jerry tells us that he is making condescending remarks, but again, we are told.
Oh, yes, the confrontation between Jerry and Keith. Yes.
There actually, and there's a few of them, but the real thing is that apparently there was something that was not shown. Ooh. And I was much more optimistic. And generally, I do feel like this season there was much less of that, but it still does happen.
Yeah.
Sorry?
We had a night shot this time, and I rather wish we didn't, but I'll talk about that when we get to it.
Right. But all we know, like I said, is Keith is a chef, and that's his thing. He's going to cook. Okay, great. Again, I think kind of copying from Rudy, thinking a little bit about Rich, right? That if you can just provide people with food and, and make whatever they have, more palatable, that can make you very popular. So yeah, looking forward to see how that works out. Mitchell is a singer-songwriter, and apparently he really is 7 feet tall. He's extremely tall. And I've heard that he actually
He didn't figure in my he didn't figure at all for me in this episode. Really, I hardly noticed him.
Right. But yeah, so Mitchell is there. That's all we can say at this point. So then Jerry, we've already spoke about a little bit. And she does think she's an aspiring actress, which I assume means, she's a waitress in LA. And she says she's listening, but she's listening. She's just anything. She says anything that they say or do, I will use for strategy. So that is good, right? That makes me think, a little bit of Richard Hatch in there, right? Looking for things that she can use to.
I think there's a lot of Richard throughout the entire episode. Richard has had a major effect on the whole series now.
Oh, of course, right? Everybody wants to cut, but the thing is, you can't all be Richard Hatch. I feel like to really win this game, you have to play as yourself, right? So it's fine to try to be Richard Hatch, but if you are not, in fact, Richard Hatch, it's better for you to think about your strengths and weaknesses.
Yes,
but in the sense of the fact that Rich was always in the game, was always thinking about the game, from the minute he got the call that he was going. And so Jerry, at least, is saying that she's going to do something similar. So that sounds promising.
I think all television is about being yourself, but bigger.
Right. But on the other hand, when she is herself, right. But then later, Jerry is herself, right? That her tribe is, trying frantically to make a fire. And, Keith is working and Amber's working, and Jerry decides to contribute by playing the bongos.
Oh, she's the one playing the bongo. I just thought that was
bongos. So that was her luxury item. She decided to bring bongos.
I would have taken a bucket of water, or I would have taken one of those things I hauled through the desert to all 5 miles. I would have poured the entire lot over her and her bloody machine. What was she doing? Why don't you
tell us what you really think, Tim?
What?
Why don't you tell us what you really think?
No, I just, no. I was thinking, as you were saying this, I was thinking, I quite like the idea of Jerry. And then I thought, and then you said she was the one playing the bongos. I pegged her as somebody that I would like. If I had had the opportunity, she would have been out on day one. Insane. There are some times where music is not required. You've got to concentrate. What did you think? I think that was production saying, why don't you play your bongo?
And Keith said something that he was kind of like, he was trying to use it, like, let her do something that's important to her so she feels like she's participating. Again, I don't know if that was Keith's idea.
Just making an infernal noise. She wasn't even in time. Oh God, awful, musically heinous and socially inappropriate.
Well, maybe she figured, Sonia brought her banjo, right? So maybe that's why Jerry brought her bongos. But there's a big difference.
Brought her banjo, but that was the Peggy Seeger moment, which was actually quite charming. It was quite charming. But no, Jerry. I mean, she should throw that thing in a billabong and just be done with it, or give it to a kangaroo, probably nurse it into a proper drum. Just no. It was horrible, no. And all
I will say is that Jerry is a big character. Jerry is going to be a big character, and that's not so surprising.
Have I taken against the winner? Oh my God!
No. Being a big character is not the same thing as being the winner, right? Most big characters don't win. Many big characters don't even make the merge, right? Because they annoy people, or but they're still big characters.
If I had been in this season of Survivor, I would have got rid of her at the first opportunity, because she just. There are times when we need music, and there are times when we actually need support. And banging away out of tune, out of rhythm on your silly little diminutive drum is not going to be helpful in anybody's in any situation. And also sitting so close while somebody is trying to do something and trying to concentrate. And I suspect getting quite irritated as well.
Jerry and Keith are definitely getting on each other's nerves. And that's going to happen again. That's all I'm going to say.
Was Keith the fellow trying to make fire?
Yes. Amber was holding the pole, and Keith was the one doing the work, and Jerry is banging on the drum.
The one making the noise, and looking so intense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was her look. If I'd been Keith and I turned around and seen her expression, that would have been the end of it. Really, that would have been the end of it.
See, I was going to say somebody who actually plays the bongos well, because I actually so one of the dance classes I took a long time ago was African jazz, and it was accompanied by a guy on drums. It wasn't bongo; we had like 4 or 5 different drums, and they would not play music. There was nobody at the piano, like sometimes there is in ballet, and it really was just incredibly soothing. But again, it's about, like I said, being in the rhythm. If Jerry had been able to kind of drum in the rhythm that Keith was trying to use,
it might have been helpful. I think nevertheless, I would probably have. Couldn't she have brought a set of gamelan sort of drums? That would have been more entertaining.
What are those gamelan drums? I'm not familiar.
They're from Indonesia or something. They're rather charming, and you have lots of them, and you sort of. Charming. And
I was hoping that somebody was going to be playing the didgeridoo, but nobody brought a didgeridoo.
The didgeridoo. I mean, how would you get that? Well, you'd probably get that in your military play. Is that a didgeridoo? Or are you just happy? Or is that a didgeridoo, or are you just blessed?
Either one works. Then again, more people that we don't really know much about. Kel is in military intelligence, and I think that's about all we know about him.
Yes, but he looks lovely.
Yeah.
He looks.
That's your type. My type is Colby. Colby is quite attractive, and Jeff as well. But Jeff, I just found him a little bit of insufferable. So Kel, we don't know much about. Amber. All we know about Amber, like I said, she helped Keith make the fire. She's an administrative assistant, right? So she's an office worker. And she said that the rice is very heavy, right? When she had to carry it. And she's right. Rice is heavy, right? It's something that hard. And she weighs, 70 pounds soaking wet. So I'm sure she found it difficult. And that's all we know about Amber. And then we get Tina, who we know even less about. Tina told she's a mother and a private nurse.
Oh, I knew. I didn't even figure in my, she disappeared from my view. I've got her written down here, and I've got nothing against her at all.
I don't think we heard her speak.
Yeah.
We saw her, like I said, with her kids outside,
private nurse and mime.
Yes. Again, seems like a nice lady, but we just got nothing.
There we are.
So that's what we're. So again, the big characters we're seeing so far: Colby. Obviously, Keith and Jerry are going to probably continue to get into it. Keith is going to try to cook, and that's it for Ogakor. Yeah. And like I said, Mad Dog, I was, people expected a big character, and we will see more in future episodes. But if this is supposed to be the new movie, I'm kind of underwhelmed.
She was exhausted. She was exhausted from that.
Oh yeah, obviously. So then we get to Kucha. Yeah. So now we get to Kucha, right? Kucha is the second tribe, and they will be wearing blue. Okay. So the first we hear that, so just like Tina was a mother and a nurse, Mike is a father and a software developer. Okay.
Oh yes. Mike seems to be the driver of this group, or at least he wants to be.
Right. He seems to have appointed himself leader. He said that, he hunts and he fishes and right. And so he's got a leg up on this.
I got here, hunts, fishes, etc. I have no idea what the etc. was. I lost interest after fishes. Right.
But he's a little bit of a blowhard. But on the other hand, together with Roger, they did get the shelter up, so maybe he knows what he's doing. I don't know, because even if you hunt and fish, I'm not sure what that really has to do with building a shelter.
Roger wasn't completely convinced he knew what he was doing.
Right.
In the thing at the end, Roger was very sort of positive about him, but I suspect he was being diplomatic.
I was going to say, yeah, I think Roger's the kind of guy who was never going to really say anything really negative about somebody. He's going to kind of couch it. So, right, I have a feeling, right, he didn't really like Mike much, but he held his tongue. And it turns out, but he is a teacher. He's a farmer. He has a family farm, and he teaches carpentry. So again, he knows more about working with wood than Mike does. But Roger also may know something that Mike does not seem to know, which is being seen as the leader is not generally a good thing in Survivor. Right? You stick your head up, right? That's a good way to get it cut off. But Mike is oblivious to that, right? We'll see later at Tribal Council, right? People said that he's a leader, and Mike is not arguing. We'll get to him later, but they answer that as, oh, I'm not the leader. I'm just, I'm blessed. I know how to work with wood, and so I just wanted to share my talents. But no, I'm not the leader. We didn't hear any of that from Mike. Mike, like, you want to call me the leader? Cool, I'm the leader. So we'll put a pin in that.
I think Deb wanted to be the leader.
Yeah, well, like I said, so and that's, again, more people that we don't know much about. Alicia, she's a personal trainer. She's from New York City, person of color. Unfortunately. And that's about, don't really know much about her.
Nice name.
Sorry, nice name?
Don't you think the name Alicia is lovely?
Yeah, it's a pretty name.
It's on my list of names. I like it. Yeah. It's also at the beginning of the alphabet, so I can remember it. I very much like the first part of the alphabet. First of all, they then don't compete with myself. But secondly, so Karen is very good. Karen, you just make it. You just make it into the first group. Right. But I just think it's so nice. People with names with A. I do know a person called Aleph, which I think is rather nice. Aaron or Aaron, I think is a good name.
Aaron is so my son has Aaron was his middle name. Because he has, they're both Hebrew names, but this is a more, but he does. So he goes by Aaron now.
Yeah, I mean, it's up there with aardvark. It's going to be right at the beginning of the dictionary. It's a good name.
But I was just thinking though that having seen the alphabet strategy last season, right? If my name was Alicia, right, and I was applying to Survivor, I would use my middle name, whatever it was, right? Or my legal name is Alicia, but you can call me Wendy.
Yes.
So then we get to see Elizabeth, who immediately was pegged as the new Colleen, right? She's going to be America's sweet. She certainly looks the part. She looks the part. She's very cute.
But she didn't do anything either, did she?
Not really, but again, it's a 42-minute episode. They have to introduce us to 16 people, right? Even if we don't see much of this episode, we'll see what they show us going forward. But and then did you see? Well, I guess we'll talk when we get to Tribal. That ridiculous headdress she was wearing.
Oh God! Oh, she was that one. Oh my God! Oh my God!
I can tell you because I was trying to figure out what the heck she was wearing. Next episode, Kimmy's going to be wearing it. So the story of that headdress that is Elizabeth's luxury item, and the reason that she brought it, when she was watching Borneo, that's what she would wear. Right, this was her little Borneo headdress, and she wore it every time she watched an episode, and so she brought it to Australia so that she could wear it.
Oh my God! I'm now seriously considering whether or not I should wear a hat in future.
Because I was looking at going, what is that thing?
Well, this thing, this was given to me by a George.
Well, those things I'm very familiar with because my boys used to wear keep on.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of young boys, in Israel or in the U.S., whatever, because the smaller, knitted or velvet ones, you need like a bobby pin to stick it to your head, and the kids don't like that. So something like that, it just sits on the head, right? It's let's wear those.
Yeah, we like that. It makes you feel as if you stepped out of a Barbara Streisand film, doesn't it? Anyway, right now you're going to break into song. Papa, can you hear me? You know.
Well, see, that won't happen on Survivor because then they have to get the rights, right? That's why they keep telling people they're singing.
Well,
that's why Sonia had to sing an original song on Borneo, right? Because if she had sung anything that was written by somebody else, they would have had to have gotten the rights.
Right.
So, otherwise obviously I'm sure there would be a lot more singing. And you see it also in Big Brother all the time. You just don't stop singing, right? Because when they're singing, that's footage we can't use. Okay, so next we get to meet Kimmy. Okay, Kimmy is a bartender from Long Island. Okay, Long Island is not so far away.
I can't believe I've got a list of people I don't like in this series. Kimmy is right at the top of it, and her midnight conversation was just so outre, so unacceptable. You know, look. The word pornographic was invented for Kimmy's conversation.
I think but conversations like this on Survivor, I think, probably happen a lot. And we only really saw, so we don't know what everybody else thinks, because Deb obviously
we know exactly what they think. They were either grimacing or telling us afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
They were not happy.
Right. But in terms of the accent and the fact that she's loud, again, Long Island is very close to New Jersey. She reminds me of a lot of people I grew up around. And she speaks her mind. Like I said, she's a big character. She likes to talk about masturbation, threesomes, and and also it's interesting that actually made it into the episode. They were a little bit oblique about what they were talking about, but there was enough to figure it out. That into the family hour at 8 p.m. in 2000 actually really surprised me, but it did seem in there.
Even today in 2021, I think it's a bit rich. I had to take my glasses off during that episode at that point
because they were fogging up, or you just didn't want to see it.
I just didn't want to see it. It was like. Do you remember that scene in Name of the Rose? Such a good film, but you just feel in the kitchen scene you have to take off your spectacles because it's sort of there's bits you really shouldn't be looking at.
So the next
it just isn't monastic.
Kimmy is again a big character, but big character doesn't necessarily mean good survivor.
With a piercing voice in the middle of the night. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why we had Jeff. So taking this out of order, but Jeff is an internet projects manager, right? We know that he's nauseous, right? And the Kimmy gives
Jeff. I like Jeff.
But this comment really kind of struck me because in 2000, I think it's early 2001, nobody really thought much about this. But in 2020, it just really struck me that he said, he wants to grab Kimmy by the neck and shake the shit out of her. And I understand his feeling, right?
Yes.
But the fact that those were the words he used, I'm saying, and back then it was nothing. I mean, I don't think anybody really, because we were just not as tuned into this kind of normalization of violence against women.
I understand his sentiment. I just think she needed to have been turned off or turned down. Right. She just doesn't have sensitivity for other people.
Right. And you do have to get along with the rest of your tribe. And so if everybody else, again, if you're the loudest, because I can certainly be that person, right? You got to dial it down because just annoying people, especially in the early game, right? Later, if you have enough, if you're going to benefit your tribe enough, they may keep you around even though you're annoying. But in these first few, episodes, if you are just annoying the heck out of everybody and you are not, an incredible challenge beast, they'll just get rid of you.
Yeah. You see, what I found so extraordinary about this group is, at least in terms of the episode, it looked as if they were all fighting among each other, and yet when they got to the council, Jeff was saying how much they all got on together, and I was thinking, no, they all got off together. No, actually, other way around. They all fought together, and they didn't get on together at all. I didn't see that cohesion at all in this group, which is probably why they failed the challenge.
Right. Well, let's just go through the rest of these quickly. We're going to get to the challenge in one set because there are some things we need to discuss. But so Nick and
Alicia is a trainer.
Yeah, she's a personal trainer.
Yeah.
And like I said, Nick, all we really know about Nick is that he goes to Harvard Law School and he doesn't know how a compass works.
He certainly doesn't, poor boy.
Yeah. And actually, so Mario Lopez, right, the survivor historians, we had him on last week. So when he talks about, Australian Outback, so apparently he had a brother who was at HLS when Nick was there. So even before the season started, maybe even before it was announced, his brother said, hey, I think I know a guy who's going to be on this new Survivor. And so Mario emailed him and he said, once you get voted out or the season is over, I'd love to interview you. And he said, great, sure. And that was just not allowed back then. But he had that, that rooting interest from the very beginning, right? He was really rooting for Nick because, again, Harvard lawyer, right? He's got to be smart. And his brother says he's a really nice guy and he's in good shape, right? So Mario was really excited. He wants to get the interview with, somebody who hopefully is going to be the winner of Survivor. And the first thing we see, and almost the only thing we see, is he can't figure out a compass. So, yeah. But seems like a nice guy, doesn't understand compass. And then the other person was, Deb. We've already talked about her a little bit. She and Kimmy really do not like each other.
Oh,
but Deb also had a couple of comments, like, the first thing when they finally hit the beach, she wanted to make a shelter out of rocks. Did you catch this? She's like, there's so many rocks. You can just make a shelter out of rocks. Yeah. And I'm like, unless you know how to build the pyramids, I don't think that's going to work. The other big mistake I think Deb made was that, she thought that she knew how to make a fire because she read a book about it. Right?
Oh,
she said, do this, and you're supposed to do this. And Kimmy, and I was 100% in agreement with Kimmy on this, that she said, if she had actually practiced this, right, and she had some ideas, then I would absolutely listen to her. But just saying, well, I read a book and that fire was not behaving like the book, there's no real reason to listen to that. And I'm not saying that it's not like everybody hated her and wanted her out immediately, but when somebody had to go, right, it was I don't think they had a difficult time. So they get 5 minutes to grab their stuff. They get enough water for a few days because, then they're going to they won't be able to boil more water until they get a fire. And, they make, I don't know if there's anything we need to discuss with this, but when they finally hit the beach, they meet each other. Anything in this stage that we should flag, or should we go to the?
No. Except, they do this long hike, the 5-mile hike to the flags. And that's all they are. They're just flags. In the middle of nowhere. There's nothing else.
That is a new thing now. We will see those going forward, these tribe flags. You will always have a flag like that.
And then during the challenge, they had to stand on a mat.
That is a Survivor thing going forward. Same thing, you find whatever your color is, you stand on the mat. I think it also just gives people a visual. I think it's the same reason they use the buffs, right? It just gives you kind of a visual reminder of which tribe people are on.
Yes.
So anything that they can do to kind of, count it into your head in the first episode or two in terms of like who's on which tribe. Once you have watched a couple of episodes, you don't need it. But initially, right, any little reminder of, this person goes here and this person goes here. Because again, I've seen this season multiple times and it's not like I knew immediately who was on which tribe. I remember all of them from the show. But it's never a bad idea to be reminded, you're blue, you're green.
I must say, the color coding in terms of their costumes was not as clear to me. But I did look out for it this time.
I think they did less of that. I mean, they still continue to do some of it in Survivor, but that's why they always want you to, excuse me, they want you to be wearing your buff somewhere. You can put it on your head, you can put it on your wrist, you can wear it as a tube top. We don't care, but you should have it on you somewhere.
So other than that little bit of cloth, you can wear any color costume.
Well, like I said, they have certainly, in later years, right, in later seasons, they tell you that, you should be focusing on red or blue or green or whatever. It's not like you have to be dressed head to toe in it.
That's very good because, limited people with limited minds like me, we need to have things color coded and flagged up for us. I watch films on the telly and I've lost the plot completely because I can't tell the difference between between these two girls, both of whom got blonde hair, and therefore, is that the same girl? And my partner was saying, no, that's the nasty girl. I said, I don't remember. And I got completely confused.
Sorry, Sam Higdon here in the chat actually is defending Nick's compass hills because he said something I didn't think of. He said, because they were below the equator, the compass has to be read differently. So how does that work?
Oh, no, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm saying so it's possible that I and Mario have insulted Nick unnecessarily. Maybe there is a different. I don't know how do you use compass then below the equator?
I don't know. I would be useless. What I'd be interested to know is how much time did they have to know that they were going to Australia and not to Bali or somewhere?
That's a good question. I don't know how much information they get in terms of, do they know where they're going versus just being told, the temperatures and things like that. I really don't know for these.
Because surely one of the things that you would do is go and get a book on outback survival.
Right. And that it's possible that they don't tell them for that reason. When we do get to talk to somebody from the season, obviously we will ask them that.
We need to ask that, yes. Because I had a long series of flights to get all the way to Australia. So how are they going to get the family over for that family visit?
Probably, well, like I said, it would have to be a similarly long trip. I don't want to flag anything that's going to happen later, so let's just put that aside. But we can discuss that later. So we get to this reward/immunity challenge, right? They combine them.
Before that, I think we do have one rather nice. So the things I flagged up in today's episode were, number one, Kimmy's inappropriate conversation tricks in the middle of the night, and number two, the figs and the bugs, which was it was grim.
Well, especially the thing with Mike, though, and I think that this was kind of edited this together for this reason, that he's this great outdoorsman, right? But he just bites into that fig, and then is very upset when it's full of mugs. If you are such an outdoorsman, you should know that you don't bite into a fruit, right? You cut it open first if you think it might be infested. So I think that was also, they were trying to.
I do remember a slightly alarming fig episode that I had in Greece. I got arrested because I'd overstayed my time, but the police hadn't quite updated their understanding of time to fit in with sort of modern Europe, because we were, by that point, Greece had just entered Europe, and so I was asked to go over to the police station. When I got there, I think they'd realised they'd asked me inappropriately, and so they changed their tune and said, would I draw their police station? So of course I sat down and drew their police station. I thought, performing seal, and then they said to me, we will pay you with a bucket of figs, which I thought was lovely. I then had to go all the way over the mountain back to where I lived, and on the way I thought, I'll just eat all these figs. And I did. I ate an entire bucket of figs. And by the time I got within sight of my little village, I'm afraid I was practically slipping down the mountain. Figs are extraordinarily efficacious and disturbingly so.
Yes.
Whether they have little bugs in them or not. and in these days, I'm afraid I tend not to eat figs. I have that sort of memory of a yes, I have a memory of slight anxiety.
You know the answer. Don't eat a bucket of them.
Well, yeah, but I am a little bit obsessive, even when it comes to food. And clearly, I was hungry. I was hungry. It was an entire day trekking backwards and forwards to the police station for no purpose, except to draw it. Pointless.
So note to self: do not try to feed Tim any figs. We'll keep that in mind.
One or two, I will accept.
Okay.
Do you peel your figs before you eat them? By the way,
I am not a huge fan of figs. I'm embarrassed to tell you. I mean, I eat fig Newtons. Sorry?
What? Did
I've
you
certainly
have?
had, especially when I lived in Israel, they were certainly around. Like I said, I've never been a huge fan. My son used to like them. I mean, they're fine, but I can't tell you the last time that I actually ate a fresh fig. It's been, like I said, at least 5 years. It certainly hasn't happened in this country, and it's probably been longer.
Well, there we are. Anyway, let's go on. Figs and bugs.
Yeah, so now we'll get to the reward immunity challenge. They're going to win waterproof matches. Okay. And obviously, the losing tribe is going to have to go to tribal council. So thankfully, Jeff Probst now calls it an immunity idol. He stopped calling it a talisman, because that just always bothered me. I figured, most people don't even know what that word means, right? Why do you have to call it a talisman? Just call it an idol.
It sounds as if it's a small island under Australia. Maybe you had to make that very clear.
Yeah. But so this challenge, it's kind of similar. I'm sure that it's meant to call back to Quest for Fire, which was the first challenge in Borneo, right, where they were on the rafts and they had to go and get fire. And so obviously they don't have access to the ocean. They're on a river. So, but it's kind of like a relay race. You have to build a bridge and then carry the torch across the bridge and this and that. And if the torch falls in the water, you lose. It's not that you can go back to the beginning.
Yes. But that have happened rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the camera didn't seem very interested in it. So,
if they missed the moment, I think they missed the moment
when it fell in.
Kucha dropped there. I mean, when their raft capsized.
What if both torches had fallen in the water?
Good question. I don't know, but it does seem that they missed the moment where the torch fell in the water. But we got lots of footage around it, and so we did not see them trying to complete the challenge. Right, once Ogakor lit the big torch. So I think they didn't tell us this directly, but I think that, like I said, the torch fell in the water. And so at that point, Ogakor didn't really have to rush. They didn't know that, right? Because Kucha would not be able to compete. Because normally what they would do now, I would think, is that if it falls in the water, you have to go back and again, it'd be very hard to make up the time, but at least normally that's what they would do. Because again, what happens if Ogakor drops their torch in the water, like you said, right? They normally would just have, because like you said, this challenge was really over pretty quickly once Kucha dropped it. And then this was interesting, that when Ogakor won, they celebrated by lighting that whole ladder thing that they had built, right, on fire. It's like, you have fire, let's start an enormous bonfire with this thing that we just built.
Yeah, and let's potentially have a forest fire.
Right.
The camera did come back, and we did see that this was really quite some way away from the trees. But
I'm assuming that they were careful with that. But it was just a weird, you might want to use it for something else. Don't burn it. Right. The only thing we normally see them burning is the camp. Like we saw that with Borneo, right, the very end of the season, and they don't do that anymore either. But they did that for quite a while. And the other thing with this is we still don't have the play-by-play from Probst in terms of with what's going on. We do get this little graphic saying, Ogakor leading, Kucha trailing, something like that. But there's no attempt, even because, so now Probst does it in real time during the challenge. And then I'm sure they also add things on. But they could certainly, I'm not saying he would necessarily run along with them and do the commentary the way he would now, but they could have just added this later, right? Once they've edited it, then you just you give Jeff a mic, and you say, and this happened, Kucha, the raft capsized, did it fall? This would not be that hard to do, but they still, I guess, don't feel the need. So
I thought most of this episode explained itself. And
it did.
From that point of view, Karen, I think this episode was one of the more beautifully edited episodes that I've seen. It was. You mean just in terms of all the nature shots? It was terribly clear all the way through. The technicians had my hand, and I just felt comfortable with it.
And they did a very good job. Yeah, and they're kind of showing us their new, the new climate, which is very different from what we see.
There was a jarring point in Borneo in almost every single episode. And this episode, the only jarring things were the characters who were a little irritating in certain cases. And it's sort of like that.
This is a different show, I would say, from Borneo, right?
Much more accomplished.
Much more, right. I think if I had shown you and said, this is season 10, right? I wouldn't have been surprised, right? But the fact that they made this jump from 1 to 2 so deliberately, right? They really have it. It's become a much more professional operation. But they're still missing things. They missed 2 things in this first episode. So they're still tweaking it, but they're getting better in terms of not having things where, because in Borneo this happened, I don't remember how many times, right? Where we didn't see it, but we were told about it. And we were unhappy about that last season. It is improving, but it is by no means fixed.
Yeah, I think I saw the torch fall in the water.
Okay, but we certainly did see. But Jerry is saying that, but also Jerry said that Keith is making disparaging remarks, plural.
Oh yes.
If that actually happened, I would like to see it.
I would like to see the disparaging remark, because they'd be significantly more interesting than Kimmy's comments in the middle of the night. We can get rid of Kimmy's comments, which they belong in a teenager's dormitory. And then focus on the confrontation with Deb, the confrontation with Keith and Jerry. That would be the interesting stuff.
But I would say that Deb's ouster, that Kimmy's, the things that she was saying in the shelter, they really are very important for why Deb goes home. Right. I mean, that would be my argument. Yeah, because let's get into tribal. Or before we get to tribal. So with Kucha back at camp, they're still trying to make fire. Jeff is still nauseous. Deb says it's either her, Roger, or Jeff because she's sick. So same thing. She's just assuming, and everybody seems to be assuming, it's going to be one of the older people. The only question is which one. Is it going to be Roger or Deb? Or then maybe Jeff because he's sick. And and from this point, this is good gameplay on Deb's part, right? To keep reminding us that Jeff is sick, and she supposedly was going around throwing him under the bus, right? Saying that he wants to go home. But we saw this back and forth between Jeff talking to Alicia.
He was the person saying people want to go home.
Right.
Wasn't her?
Sorry. Well, Deb was saying that Jeff wanted to go home.
Deb saying that scene on the beach where she was saying, he wants to go home.
Right.
I wouldn't be upset if he wanted. That's Deb saying that.
I think so. Yeah. And Jeff is like, I never said I wanted to go home.
Yes, I just think that's Weasley. She deserved to go home.
I don't think that Weasley. I said, in a sense, that is good gameplay, because if you realize people are looking at you, right, and people are maybe going to want to send you home. So the first thing you want to do is give people another option. And somebody who really can't keep food down is really not going to be that good for the tribe if it continues. So no, I have no problem with Deb trying this, right? I'm also fine that it didn't work. But no, I don't see this out of line at all. It's actually playing the game.
So you get caught out in a lie. That's much, much worse.
Right, but how do you get caught in a lie? So he's saying, I never said that. Right. Yep. It doesn't mean he's telling the truth either. Remember, this is Survivor, where you never can trust that anyone is telling you the truth.
True. He may not be telling the truth, but it then makes you look as if you're caught out in a lie. That's not good.
But I still feel like it's better than doing nothing. Right. I always hate when people just.
We have to put on our lawyer's hat here. It doesn't. Simply to say that you are caught out in a lie doesn't mean you are lying. It means you are caught out looking as if you're lying, and that's as bad.
Right, but I'm not sure that anybody was going to necessarily assume that Jeff was telling the truth. I don't think necessarily that's why Deb went home. I think Deb was just kind of looking for anybody but me, which is a reasonable Survivor strategy. It didn't happen to work, right? But it was worth it.
It's like a small village thing. You can shame somebody, and then they have to explain themselves whether they've done something wrong or not. And that seems to be one of the sort of social consequences of the survivor game. It's also very much something that's in Big Brother. If you have this very small, if you invent this very small society, the first thing that happens is you have this sort of curtain twitching moments, and you have to explain everything. And there's no point saying this is me, take me as you find me. No, you have to explain yourself all the time.
And again, a tribal council, right? This is greatly edited down, right? So we don't know everything else that was said. But it was interesting. Sorry?
Roger was given a huge speech.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about it a bit, but the kind of scavenger hunt in the Bible, that was cute, right? That his son-in-law took the Bible and so made one note and then made a note, look at page 141, and this is kind of it's just one of these, we talk about these character moments that I feel like in a more modern season we wouldn't see, because we'd be talking about vote splitting and another toy that you have to play at this tribal, right? But this was just kind of a nice thing to see, and it was also interesting because it is the Bible, right? Somebody else brings a Bible, but unlike Dirk, Roger doesn't seem to have any problem with ripping out pages, and he starts by saying at the beginning he's ripping out pages that don't have scripture. But he doesn't say, "Oh well, that's all I'm going to do." He basically said, you got to do what you got to do.
Somebody said, "Let's rip out the burning bush bit,"
right?
Which is a lovely joke. I just thought, but it wasn't played as a joke, but I'm sure it was intended as such.
Right.
And it's such a good joke, such a good joke.
But like I said, I just have to admire somebody who on the one hand brings a Bible because it is important to him. On the other hand, he's on Survivor, and if he needs toilet paper, he's going to use it.
Yes.
I'm sure that he got criticism on both sides from that, but I'm fine with that. It's funny. So the tribal council set, that was just amazing, where they have that. It's sitting on the top of that granite waterfall.
Oh, yes. I did think it was rather scary.
If you have a fear of heights, and I do, I wouldn't want to get too close to the edge of that. But it is.
No. And just imagine if it was raining. Oh God.
That's right. That's true. And I'm assuming it's going to happen. Yeah, and the rocks are slick. I don't. Yeah, that's a very good question.
I think it's a terrifying set. Oh God. Yeah, there we are.
So
I didn't realize the Outback looked like that. I thought the Outback was much more dry. I remember when I was a child seeing an Australian film called My Side of the Mountain, I think, which is about a boy stranded in the Outback, and it all looked to be sort of desert-like. And this is quite lush and green.
I think again, the Outback is enormous, right? It's so it's surprising it has kind of different microclimates in the Outback.
I clearly have a very insular view, and shame on me, really.
I have never been. I would love to go, but it is. It's supposed to be some beautiful country.
I hope we get some indigenous Australian animals, other than snakes and spiders. I hope we're going to have a passing kangaroo.
Didn't we already see a kangaroo? Didn't we already see a kangaroo?
Oh, the kangaroo was waiting on the runway, and not.
Okay. The plane is coming in. Okay, you got Timmy. Bring Timmy in. Okay, the plane is on the ground. Release the kangaroo.
Yeah, Timmy the kangaroo. I'm very happy with that.
Obviously, we don't know that's what happened, but you had to have a kangaroo.
But Karen, in later years, they would discover that Timmy the kangaroo was actually female. Yeah.
Well, that's what they get for not asking Timmy what his pronoun was. You always have to ask.
Yes.
So we get to the votes. Deb votes for Jeff. Everybody else votes for Deb. And what Kimmy says, I think she's right here about this. She says that Deb is a strong-willed person and she's a hard worker, right? But she doesn't join in the discussions at the shelter at night. And you can say again that those discussions were of questionable taste. But it is true in a show like this. Like we saw the difference with Rudy. That Rudy says there's more of them than there are of me, right? So I need to fit in. Deb didn't do that, right? Deb was like, "This is me, right? You can take me or leave me." And that is kind of refreshing in real life. But when somebody has to go home, it's easy to look around and say, well, she didn't really bond with anybody, right? Nobody is going to say, oh, I really like Deb. If you don't share those personal stories, I feel like it really can come back to bite you.
Yes.
Tim,
she wants to be tough. Mm-hmm. And the problem is television and people, when you bond with people, you don't bond with toughness, you bond with vulnerability.
Right, exactly. And again, she's a corrections officer, so she probably learned not to show vulnerability on the job, right? But if you don't do some of it on
what's her job? What was her job? She's a
corrections officer. She's a prison guard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't do a lot of vulnerability on that job, would you?
Exactly. But
I'm feeling a little tender today. Please be nice to me. I just murdered someone.
Yeah. That doesn't work, I guess. But this wasn't right.
But in Prisoner Cell Block H, didn't you like that nice? There was one of the nice warders, and then there was the Beast. Do you know this television series?
No, but I've heard of it. But yeah, no, but there were the good guards and the bad guards. If you watch, any prison drama was going to have the good guards and the bad guards, and So I do want to try to give Deb a little bit of credit, or not credit, but understanding as to why she was not able to fit in. But this really also, I think, got people's attention because, like, when Gretchen went home, right, it was such a big deal that she went home because she was a threat. Right, not because she wasn't a hard worker. So Deb, I don't think really Deb was a threat. I think Deb thought Deb was a threat. Right, I'm not sure that she really was, but she was voted off because people didn't like her.
But she was definitely a hard worker as well.
Oh yeah, no, and even Kimmy, who doesn't like her, gave her the credit. She said she works hard, right? She's a strong little person. This is who she is, right? But that's what I'm saying. If somebody has to go, right, that person who has not bonded with anybody else is going to be the one who goes.
Yes.
Right. So Deb Eaton, so we say goodbye to Deb.
But she was trying to bond. She was trying to bond when she was having those conversations about why Jeff should go, wasn't she? She just used her group time in a bad way. She used her group time to bitch about somebody else rather than to bond.
But that's what I was going to say. But arguing that somebody else should go home is not really bonding. When I'm talking about bonding, I'm talking about late at night. You're in the shelter, right? You're telling stories. And the only time we saw that was, everybody was together. And maybe they didn't really like Kimmy, but at least they're all kind of chuckling along. And Deb is very open about the fact of, I don't want to do this. And you walk away. And so that is, like I said, if they had not lost that challenge, right, then she would have been fine, but they did. Somebody has to go, right? It's clear that people like Roger, right, and Jeff is saying, I threw up, but I'm not that sick. And
so why would Deb not vote? Why would Deb not vote for Kimmy to go home?
Well, I think because I think it's because if she was hoping that other people, right, because Jeff was sick, right? If she voted for Kimmy, she was going to be the only vote for Kimmy. I guess maybe a couple other people would also vote for Jeff.
But isn't it unfair to vote for somebody who's not well?
There's nothing unfair in Survivor, I would argue, if it's within the rules. And it's not just that, it makes sense. When you have somebody sick in your tribe, it's going to drag down the entire tribe. But they're not going to be able to compete in challenges.
But surely the tribe
vote out the sick person.
No, Karen, you are wrong. The tribe and humanity. The tribe represents humanity. Humanity is at its best when it cares for the sick, not when it throws them out.
Yes, but this is not Humanity in Life. This is a game show for $1 million. And
it's a game show for $1 million.
You're too nice, Tim. Now we get back to Tim is too nice to really watch Survivor. But if you want to feel a little bit better about what happened to Deb, so let me fill you on the rest of the story. We will see this in the there will be another reunion.
Before you go on, so in fact, Deb's vote for Jeff was actually being kind. This is Deb being kind.
Perhaps, or like I said, at least using her vote strategically, hoping that maybe, and again, I don't know what she was told. Maybe she thought other people were voting for Jeff. right? But from that standpoint, it's a perfectly reasonable vote, right? You're not going to vote for yourself.
I thought her bitching was effective. She was mistaken, poor thing. Anyway, tell me about the day.
Later in the season, it actually becomes very important because we used to think in Borneo, right? One person goes home, and then it doesn't really matter who else gets votes, right? It does become more relevant here in terms of how they break ties. I'm just going to flag this. The fact that Deb voted for Jeff is going to become important in a later episode. So just put a pin on that for right now. Yeah, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to give away future episodes. So just file that in your brain that everybody else voted for Deb and Deb voted for Jeff. When it becomes relevant, I will return to this story.
Please do. I see how that.
Yeah. So Deb goes home, and then on the reunion show, they get into this. But this is something that actually happened even before the season started to air. So they filmed the season, they release the cast, at some point before the season begins. And so the press starts, doing some research on these people, and the local papers, right, all want to write stories about you, et cetera, et cetera. So somebody who was just checking, seeing what they could find out about these people, turns out that Deb Eaton was engaged to somebody who was technically her stepson. Okay. So Deb was 45. Okay. She married an older man, like in her 20s. I don't know how much older he was, but in his 50s or 60s, let's say.
Yeah.
And that man had 2 sons. Okay. And they were married for 20 years. Now, Deb did not parent. So Deb was, at the time of the filming, Deb is 45, and Bobby, the stepson, was 34. I don't know how old her husband was. But so she was married to this guy for 20 years. She knew he had 2 sons. I don't even know if she'd met them, but she certainly did not parent them. He dies. And I don't know if Bobby came to the funeral or whatever, but they met and they hit it off. And they got close. And a lot of people were obviously, not too thrilled about this incest, right? Is this really incest? I mean, first of all, it's not a blood relationship, but even more than that, if she had raised him from childhood, right, then I would say it's highly, highly unethical. But she never met him, right, when her husband was alive. I guess I tend to give people more slack on things like this than a lot of people, right? I feel like if you're both adults, right, whatever you want to do that doesn't hurt anybody else, I don't care, right? But Deb was really just dragged through the coals over this, and you will see her on the reunion. She is just not happy to be there, not happy to be talking about this. No, she denies that they were engaged, but she did say that they were in love. And she said, like I said, I love my husband. My husband is gone, right? I met Bobby. I never raised Bobby. But apparently, America didn't like it much. And Deb really, really had a very hard time.
Whole thing.
Yeah. On the other hand, it is the thing. And maybe they didn't really fully realize, although after Borneo, they should have realized just how much press these people got. And so Entertainment Weekly came out with, I think it was an entire whole magazine, not just an article, about the cast of Australian Outback. So I would say if you have, I don't know if this is a secret, but if you have anything like this that could be a secret, right, that some people might not look too kindly on, maybe you don't want to go on national television.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that shouldn't happen, right? You should be able to be on a show. But it's the nature of the beast that, right, the press does just go crawling through your life.
Yeah.
And it even happened also to a certain extent with Rich. I forgot to ask him about this when he was here. But so after he got back from the island, his son, Chris, I forgot who had been taking care of him, but apparently Chris had put some weight on when he was away. Rich had just lost all this weight, and it was important to him. He didn't want Chris to continue to put on weight. So he basically took the kid out running. Well, he wasn't taking him running. Chris was running, and Rich was driving alongside, making him run. And so people said, oh, that's child abuse. And it was investigated. It was dropped. It was not child abuse. But what happens is there's a lot of press over the fact that he was charged with child abuse, and very little press about the fact that, yeah, it was dropped as being completely unfounded.
Yes.
But yeah, like I said, well, did you have experiences like this? I'm saying when you were on the circle. I mean, well, you said, did you really appreciate the extent to which they would go through your life?
Well, in my life, there are some flags which people just want to wave, and the fact that I'd taken on a national politician was a flag. People, wherever I went, I was identified as somebody who'd been involved in that politician's party. They weren't interested in my saying, well, I got involved in order to sort of check whether or not it was authentic, whether or not it was racist, and so on. And I've been quite open about that was my reason, but they weren't interested in that. They've already got their thing. But I will always answer questions about that.
And when you did realize just how racist he was, you quit.
Well, I didn't think the leader was racist. I just thought the party embraced racism, and he tolerated it, and I quit it. Yeah, absolutely. I should have delayed a little bit, because it would have made bigger news in a way, and it would have done more damage to the whole thing. And so by doing it at the timing that I did it, in a way I did myself damage rather than transferring that to So yeah. But
do you think that's why the circle reached out to you? Why do you think the circle? Because you were recruited, right? You didn't apply. So do you know why they reached out to you? Was it because of this, or was it something else?
It may have been because of that. It may also have been because I at the time when I was approached, I had quite a healthy YouTube site, which I still have, with one particular video about how to write an essay, which seems to attract a lot of attention, and so it's now about 10 years old. I'm going to revise it.
Check that out.
But it's still, but there just aren't very many reliable sites on YouTube that tell you how to write an essay, and all students have to do it. And teachers just don't seem to know how to tell students to do it. They just assume every student understands what a paragraph is. I didn't know what a paragraph was until I was well into university, I think.
I had a teacher in high school, right, when I was 15 or 16, who had been a university professor, and then kind of semi-retired and decided to teach high school. And it was only because of him that I actually know how to write a proper essay.
Well,
we had to do footnotes. I mean, he would actually send us to the university library to do research, right? Not just the local library. And, it was half an hour away, and, I didn't have a driver's license yet. So my mother was quite annoyed at having to keep driving me over there. But he's the only reason that when I did hit university, I knew what to do.
And the footnotes automatically follow. If you know how to do it, the footnotes are an automatic thing that can follow on. It's just one of these little decorations that you can add. But the problem is, I think school teachers are often so desperate to get the children to actually write a substantial bit of writing that they're interested in sort of encouraging them to write more than one sentence. Whereas essays really are about organizing the material you've got, and you've generally got too much material.
Right.
And it's about sometimes killing your darlings. You need to take an axe to the things you really like, because actually those aren't necessary.
Well, it's like you said, that the hard part is writing the short essay, right? Yeah. Writing a 5-page essay is much harder than writing a 15-page essay, because you've already got the 15-page essay. That's your draft, right? Yeah. And you need to cut it down.
I remember at university learning not only how to write an essay, but how to précis something. And those two tools are so useful. And a little bit later, when I was in Greece and dealing with Najati's case, I think I learned how to manage a brief, and that really is. I mean, it's so well designed, so well termed. It is about managing a legal case. It's about getting the information in your head, so this point, and this point are the things, and this is the one I'm not going to talk about. Right. And you suddenly discover, when you learn how to manage a brief, you discover the tricolon. There are 3 points here. Even if there's 10 points, you divide them into 3. A, easier to remember, and B, you tend to start rearranging things, so the important thing always comes at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've got that trick, you're away. And I wish people would teach children that at a younger age, because it's so beneficial. And so that
I was just that I had one teacher who, like I said, who was a university professor, because I went to a good public school in the U.S. Yeah. Right? And I certainly knew how to write a paper before, but not like a university paper.
No.
Right? I've been write essays for other teachers, but he was the first one who really taught me how to structure something, how to structure how to structure an argument, how to structure a paragraph, right? The whole thing.
And also a lot of this is polemical, and if you've never come across that side, you've got to have it in your mind. What are the questions that can be asked? Have I answered all those questions? And by making a clear statement, you sort of dump everybody else's questions automatically. They won't get asked if you covered that area
right
effectively. And you don't want lots of questions. You want the questions to be targeted to things you want to talk about and you want to answer. So you define the terms, and you define your paper. That's what a good essay is, a well-defined task. But I've done that.
Yeah.
I think they came because of that.
Yeah, like I said, all of my youngest child just graduated from college, so I don't know if any of this is still relevant to my kids, but I will definitely pass it along. And one of them wants to go to grad school, so it still might be relevant.
To study what? To read what?
Psychology. He wants to be a therapist. So here he has an undergraduate degree in psychology, but he wants to be a therapist.
I came across something the other day which I thought was really exciting. Is it Gestalt psychology?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The thing where you look at a pattern and where you look at something in arrangement and you immediately see a pattern which may not necessarily be intended.
Right.
That's good.
I've heard of it. I mean, obviously he knows it much more than I do.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, it definitely it's something which I remember noticing in was A Beautiful Mind, the film, and seeing all these stars and things. But we like to see answers, and the problem is sometimes there aren't any. And I think that's also true in Survivor. We want everything to have significance, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Right. And the problem with the reality show is that you edit these disjecta membra, these throwaway comments, and if you edit them cleverly enough, they all sound as if they sort of fit together, but they may not.
Right.
There had been a throwaway comment that actually meant nothing, but within the context of the editing,
right.
It becomes
something else.
It has a message, and it tells a story, and that's one of the reasons I think this is such a good episode, because it told its story so comfortably.
Yeah.
I think out of all the episodes we've seen, this is the one that was most confident in the editing. I think
they learned from Borneo, right? They went back, they had to cut Borneo, they edited Borneo. I'm sure they learned what they did have, what they missed, right? What they should have gotten, footage of. And so, this is still not adult Survivor, but this is kind of, adolescent Survivor.
I think the contestants in this show are, there's a lot of contestants I would definitely not have had. And I got a list of contestants in this show who I don't really like, whereas in Borneo, I liked everybody.
Well, it's only one episode in. Let's hope that
Karen, I don't change my mind that quickly. I'm quite stubborn.
Okay. So Tim hates September 1st, 2020, Tim hates the entire cast of Survivor Australia.
No, I don't hate the entire cast. Oh.
Well, several of them we haven't seen enough to hate them. We just know nothing about them. Like we've got Tina and Amber and Kel.
Believe me, Karen, I've seen enough. I've seen enough, but I don't hate them. There's about 3 I dislike.
So it'll be interesting as we go on to see who you continue to like, dislike, how that changed. Yes. So I know how this comes out, and you don't. So,
I know.
But I love this. I get to be the guide and kind of see as this dawns on you, right? What's actually happening. I was quite proud of you that you picked out Rich as the winner right around the merge.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, right, all right.
Not on air, I think, but afterwards we were speaking.
I think I did suggest
the chance that he would be the winner.
And I you were very coy.
Yeah, and same thing this time. I do not want to tell you who goes far. I don't. Obviously,
your poker face was very good.
Well, and I'm trying, because also on this season there will be a bunch of characters who we will see again, right, in the first All Stars, and then even much further on, more recently, we've seen a few of these people in the last few years. Okay, but I'm not going to tell you who these people are right now, because then you'll know that they are big characters. Again, not necessarily the winner. By the time we get to like around the merge-ish or something like that, it is easy at that point to see. You don't know who the winner is going to be, but you know that these are the people who are going to probably be our characters.
Shall I tell you the characters who I've warmed to so far?
Please.
So they are possibly Michael, actually, Roger, Jeff, Marilyn, and is that it? I think that's it. And Colby is interesting, and Colby and Kel, but I just haven't seen enough of them to think whether they're worth anything. Keith, I'm not really very interested in. Jerry, I don't really care for. But Roger and Michael, I think that those are interesting. Jeff, I think interesting, and Deb, I think would have been there as one of my potentials. how wrong I am! How wrong I am!
But it is an important Survivor lesson, because, like I said, on the one hand, I completely understand that she did not like to listen to Kimmy in the middle of the night, cackling about her sexual exploits. I get that. Right. And I'm one of those people who there's certain things that I just, I don't, a lady does not kiss and tell. But you're on Survivor. If I were there, I would not necessarily be joining in, but I certainly would not necessarily be showing any dislike of the conversation. Right. You just kind of sit there and you smile and you nod and that's all she had to do.
Yes. Yes.
And Tim, you understand, you want to be authentic, right? You want to be real. But again, this is...
I understand that television requires a bigger version of yourself. But that also requires that you set out sort of little red lines over which you will not cross. Because if you cross these red lines, you lose yourself. And there have to be places you will not go.
Although I just realized also that, her reluctance to talk about her sex life might have something to do with who she was having her sex life with, right? And maybe she didn't. She could have just said she has a boyfriend. She didn't have to say that he was her first husband's son, right? But
it is also sort of, it is quite Byzantine, isn't it? It's not, it's
and
not
I did
edifying.
check, and they did break up at some point. They did not end up getting married. Which in a sense makes it even worse, because it's not even like, because if this is your soulmate, right? At the age of 45, right? You finally found your person. Then it might be easier to say, look, I'm happy and I don't really care what you think. But you have all of America seeing you as somebody who commits incest with a child. The child was 34 years old.
34 is, yeah.
No, like I said, if she had parented him in any way, I would have feel very differently about this. But it's unfortunate that something like this, which again is a choice made by two consenting adults. I just kind of don't see the point. I mean, it's not like I don't have my opinions about certain things, but I don't know. Anyway, the point is I'm fine with breaking taboos. Like, that's why I was talking also about last season about, nudism. Again, not something I do. If I had a stepson, I would not marry him. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I want to, chew you up and spit you out in the national press, right? Because of who you're dating. I just don't think it's terribly helpful to anybody.
I think it can be foolish to stick your head above the parapet if you've got a lot to hide.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, just if you have something like this that you think people might have strong opinions about, then maybe you would just want to think twice before you go on a show.
If she works in the prison service, she must know that these are sort of slightly dodgy areas.
Well, but again, I'm not sure that in terms of whether it's illegal, I mean, it varies from state to state, but I'm not sure that marrying not your son, but your stepson, it probably is legal.
But it's probably highly legal. There's probably no problem with it at all. The problem is, in America, you've got such a good expression. I love it. I think we ought to steal half your vocabulary because it's so good. And the expression here is, it's the optics. And the optics are very important. We don't have this expression in Britain, which is probably why we've ended up with our current sexual education. And
we have the expression, and it hasn't helped us in the slightest. But
it will at some point. Mr. Trump will have to bow to the inevitable when he loses the election, and then the optics will change. But the optics, the way things appear, and for example, you've had presidents who understood this so well, and they've not been that great, sort of intellectually, but they've been great presidents. And at the top of that list is Ronald Reagan, and we've had prime ministers in Britain who've understood this. And they're the same sort of thing. Churchill was a disaster in so many ways, but he understood the value of an appearance. He also he understood the value of speech, and he was probably the right person at the right time. But I mean, if you look back at his career, Gallipoli and so on, this is not something you would ever really want to trust. And yet, the optics were right. I think he's a very
talented speaker, and that is much more important than almost anything else.
And so for that matter, was the man I took on, Mr. Farage, just one of the greatest orators that we've got. There's a lot to be said for the people who. I know in the States a lot of politicians use speechwriters, and great. We're beginning to do it over here. People who really understand how language works, it can have a huge effect. But I think now we're living in a television age. We need to go beyond the way language works, and we need to think about an image.
I wrote some speeches. I ghost wrote some speeches for a member of Knesset in Israel years ago. Somebody who she needed to speak in English. So I was not, like I said, I was basically a subcontractor. A friend of mine was, her speechwriter for any time she spoke in English, but he had other jobs. And so sometimes when he was busy, I would do kind of the first draft or the second draft or the third draft for him. And then he would just kind of, glance at it and pass it on to her, and he would get paid, and he would turn around and pay me. So this woman was using my words, and she did not even know it.
Well, I remember there was a speech Mrs. Thatcher did at one of the party conferences, and she had this line, "You turn if you want to," and then the joke was based on a play called "The Lady's Not for Burning" by Christopher Fry, I think, which was sort of quite famous in the 1950s. And she clearly had no idea what this play was, what the joke was. So, "The lady is not for burning." So she put the thing in the wrong emphasis. And she wasn't very good on sort of throwaway ephemera. She didn't have that sort of mind. She had three major jobs. She was a lawyer, she was a chemist, she was a politician. You don't have much room for sort of theatrical tittle tattle.
Yeah.
I remember there was the other great line where somebody said, "Oh, Monty." She had a joke, and said, "Oh, what is the joke?" He said, "Oh, it's a joke from Monty Python." And she said, "Is he one of us?" And you think, yeah, there we are. You see. and so speech writing can have problems if the person doesn't really understand all the nuances.
Right.
But we need to give the things that matter. We need to give to professionals
Mm-hmm.
who can actually do it. We can't do everything, and one of the things one learns, I think, as one gets older,
Right.
is the things which I can't. One of the things I learned is just things I can't do, and people do it better.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Nobody can do everything perfectly.
Yeah. So that's why I let my partner drive. I've never sat behind the wheel of a car.
Really? You don't drive? I did not know that.
I really don't drive, no. And I think, should I learn? It would make life easier in one sense, but in another sense, why do I need to learn these skills? And I ought to concentrate on the skills I've got and try and make them better, rather than require lots of sort of other things,
Yeah, and if you find you don't need it, then now my only question is, I know that your partner did go back to Turkey for a long trip. So then what happens there? Is there like public transportation near you? How do you get around when?
Not very good. No, I was on public transportation over the weekend and it was grim. Oh gosh. And but hey, that is life. Come on.
Okay. And is that Bay wants you back? All right. So let me just do my housekeeping.
Bay has ignored me all day. The moment I get onto the computer and start podcasting, Bay is here, demanding attention.
Yeah, I don't know where mine is at normally, but this is the first time. The second time I also did it last night in this location, and maybe she hasn't figured it out yet. But anyway, so Tim, please tell people where they can get you on social media.
Oh, well, I'm on YouTube. On YouTube, I'm on under Zontool Films Limited, ZONTULFILMS LTD. And every so often, I think I ought to change that, but I'm not quite sure how to do that. So, but at some point, I might try and bring it into line with everything else.
Just be careful, because you might lose your followers if you do that.
Well, yeah, I have to be careful. And it's also named after my partner. It's his birthday tomorrow, so it's very nice. It's very nice. Now, my partner was born in a stable in the south of Turkey, and there's very few people who can say they were born in a stable. It's really a sort of, you can count them on the fingers of one hand, or actually probably with two fingers, or it's almost like a one-fingered salute. But anyway,
there's been at least one other person, right?
Well, we know two anyway. I can think of two, actually maybe three, because Dionysus, the god Dionysus, I think, was born in a stable as well. So it's three. You can do three fingers. That's not rude. Anyway, so you can get me on Zontool Films Limited, and I'm going to start doing lessons there as well. So I'm hoping to be a sort of academic resource while people have to conceivably do their education with homeschooling. And then on Twitter, I'm Prof_Tim_Wilson, and on, what's the other one? Instagram, I'm Professor_Tim_Wilson. That's me, really, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said, I have discovered that YouTube is different, but with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., if you just search for Professor Tim Wilson, you will pop up.
Oh, it's such a relief.
People can find you. Yep. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so really, you can see Karen Talks a Lot. That is my Twitter handle. I am trying to spend more time on Twitter and less time just on Facebook. I enjoy Facebook, but I've been told that it is no longer 2010, and that if I want to be on social media and for people to be able to find me, I need to be on places other than Facebook. So I am. Coming up on Survivor NSFW, last night, Johnny and Zach and I and Matt, we had Dalton Ross of Entertainment Weekly and SiriusXM Radio talking about the current episode happenings in the Big Brother house. On Thursday, we will be live immediately after the episode with Johnny, Zach, and Matt. It's fun. We finally got Matt Bischoff to watch Big Brother. He fought it kicking and screaming. He didn't watch the first couple of weeks. We said, look, if you ever want to start watching Big Brother, this is the time, because it's 3 episodes a week. So very quickly you get to the point where you have 30 episodes to catch up on. So he did. And surprise, surprise, he's actually enjoying it. There are many, many Survivor fans who have started watching Big Brother just because we don't know when we're going to have another Survivor season. And it's a very different game, but it has its advantages. This is blasphemy, I'm sure, but even though I'm on a Survivor podcast, Big Brother as a game, in terms of the game structure and the complexity, Big Brother I find to be a much more interesting game. It's kind of like Survivor is checkers and Big Brother is chess. And as you get close to the end of the game, Big Brother kind of turns into 3D chess. Right. Whereas Survivor, it always is just you get everybody together and whoever gets the most votes goes home. Big Brother's much more complicated than that. So, Sorry?
You can see it in time. With Big Brother, you can see it in real time, can't you?
Yes. So almost real time. So when you're watching the episodes, they were things that they catch up every Thursday night. On Thursday evening, they evict somebody. And at that point, you are caught up in real time. And then they start getting footage for the next episode. So then there's an episode on Sunday, which is often leftover things from Thursday, right? Mm-hmm. And the vote. And then they normally have some kind of a competition because they just have to kind of fill up the episode. And then the next episode is on Wednesday, right? But the things that are being depicted on this episode happened on Saturday or maybe Sunday. Right. So it really is quite a jigsaw puzzle they have to come up with 3 episodes a week that are exactly, the right length, but they only get a couple of days to edit it. So it really is kind of amazing what they're able to put off. Well, it's the same thing with The Circle, right? That the episodes were showing us things that would happen 2-3 days before.
Sometimes on that day, I believe.
Well, like I said, it's the same thing with Big Brother, that on Thursdays, it is a live eviction, right? We see that in real time. So we will be talking about that again on Thursday and going forward. Oh, and the other thing, look out for our coverage of Eco Challenge, the world's toughest race. Eco Challenge Fiji. It's on Amazon Prime. All the episodes are available. Now, this is the show that Mark Burnett did before Survivor. So this is being billed as season 3 of Eco Challenge, but seasons 1 and 2 happened 20 plus years ago. But they have rebooted the franchise. And so, like I said, all the episodes those were all dropped at once, just like they did with Netflix in the US on The Circle. And then every week we will be putting up episodes. I am not part of that coverage, but I know that they often bring in people from the race, right? People who were eliminated, other people who talk about the show. I have not watched it yet because I was trying to prepare for this, but hopefully this weekend I will get caught up because I've heard that it really is an amazing show. And that is a really much more physically challenged. Like if you want to ever check it out, like these people are like real ultra endurance athletes, right? Completely different level from something like Survivor. So, not really. Like I said, I'm not exactly an endurance athlete, but I can certainly enjoy watching other people hurt themselves while I sit on my couch and eat snacks. So you might want to check that out. And also, please consider checking us out at ad-free NSFW. If you become a patron, besides getting the extra episodes and the Castaway watch-alongs and weekly Q&As and everything else, you can also listen to our episodes ad-free and earlier often than the regular patrons get access to them. So if you're interested in that, please check us out at survivornsfw.com, or you go to patreon.com and search for Survivor NSFW. So next week for episode 2, just like we did last time, this might become a tradition. Tim and I are going to be joined by Elaine Stott of Survivor 39, the same woman who joined us for episode 2 of Borneo.
Yes, looking forward to that.
Yeah, so it was really lovely for her to make the time. I know she's getting married like in a couple of weeks.
Is she really?
Yes. And, she's getting married on her farm. So they're doing a lot of the work themselves. But, she said that she could carve out some time to talk to us.
That sounds wonderful. Thank her.
Sorry?
I'm so looking forward to seeing her again.
Yes, she is. She's just amazing. She is so funny. And it's kind of one of these people who kind of tells it like it is. I mean, she's a little bit better. I don't even want to put her in the same group as Deb because again, Deb didn't try to fit in, and Elaine definitely knows how to fit in. But she is the kind of person who tells it like it is, and I guess those are the kind of people who appeal to me. I feel like anybody can go on and just flatter everybody, but that's not terribly interesting to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what we do. So next week at noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT. Sorry if any of you, a few people just joined us at the end. Maybe they did not remember about the new time, but this is going to be our default time going forward. So anyway, hope to see you all there. Please stay healthy. Please stay safe. Wear your damn masks. Wash your hands. And hopefully we will see you next week on Survivor NSFW Rewind. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.